I knew I was different when I was 7, but didn't really know why until I was about 15 or 16. I went to an all-boys grammar school, and it wasn't until we had a joint sports day with the girls' school and I observed how my classmates behaved, and their behaviour confused me. I loved reading. Around that time I was reading The Chrysalids by John Wyndham. The central character is a telepath living in a future post-nuclear Holocaust world where mutants are regarded as non-humans and persecuted and exterminated. And at the point in the book where David, the central character, realises that he is a mutant, he comes out with the words, "What will they do to me when they find out I'm different?" Well, I read this and the penny dropped with one almighty thud. I finally realised that all my classmates were straight and I was gay, and that was something that they mustn't find out. And for the next 15 years or so, I kept up a pretence, never being able to drop my guard for a second. It was a very different time back then. Keeping this act up became a strain, and eventually something had to give. But by then, I was around 30, 31. While I was a student at the Polytechnic in Wolverhampton, I did try and go to the Student Lesbian and Gay Society meeting. I only got as far as the lift doors before I turned round in a panic. I felt miserable, lonely and wretched. And I didn't have anybody that I could confide in. The thing that finally started my coming out was the arrival at work in 1985 of a new colleague. Now, he was going to work with me, so I'd been involved with his interview. And halfway through the interview, I realised he was also gay. I think he was about the first person that I'd actually met that I knew for sure. And it took me 6 months to actually tell him. I mean, that's 6 months of trying to tell him. And that's the most difficult thing I'd ever done in my life. When I'd finally did it, the sense of relief was as though I'd been released from a cage. Telling the next person wasn't quite as bad, and by the autumn I'd told all my closest friends, but not my family. I'd also gone to the Lesbian and Gay Community Centre in Birmingham. I'd parked my bike up outside, walked up and down outside the door 2 or 3 times before eventually getting the courage to actually knock on it and go in. And there I finally got the support that I needed for so long. I still, however, always get nervous on meeting new people, because at some point I have to agonise on whether or when to tell them. And it was only really 2009, after hearing somebody describing how to come out to new people on the radio, that it finally sank in that this is something straight people never have to do. Anyway, as far as telling my family, that was taken out of my hands. Fate stepped in with a very nasty incident. Now, I've been interviewed by a market researcher in Dudley Street in Wolverhampton. It's just an ordinary thing. And at the end of the interview, he took address and phone number, said that the supervisor picked ones at random to confirm that they had actually met the person, and that it was just a check to make sure that the forms were genuine. Then the threatening calls started. It got to the stage where every time the phone went, I was terrified. And Mum noticed. She took me into the kitchen and she asked what was wrong. And I tried not to tell her, but eventually just everything flooded out. And I was in absolute tears, in a real state. Now, she was a bit sort of surprised, and then sort of thought, well, she'd always really known. But the thing she said to me was, whatever happens, I am always on your side. And that was a very, very emotional moment. I was very close to my mum. And when I lost her in December 1997 to bowel cancer, I was absolutely devastated. But one thing about that incident is that if I'm ever stopped by a market researcher and they ask me for my phone number, I refuse to give it. I don't even give my real name to market researchers. I have a fake name that I always use, but nowadays I just say, no, I haven't got any time. Well, after that, my self-confidence recovered a bit, and Tony commented to me, he said people had noticed, and they'd noticed how much I'd changed, that I wasn't sort of as shy and withdrawn as I had been. But I wasn't there for much longer. I'd found myself a much better job. And that year was a big change. Started going out on the gay scene in Birmingham.